Andre Washington was 38 years old, and until that Sunday afternoon, he believed he was building something that mattered. He owned his own electrical contracting business. He'd renovated his home with his own hands. Every cabinet, every wire, every tile. He had given 7 years of complete loyalty to a woman who kissed him goodbye Thursday morning and told him she was going to a wellness retreat with her girlfriends. She wasn't. While Andre was wiring other people's houses, his wife was 4 states away with her ex, a man she'd described as ancient history. 12 phone calls, the last one, 47 minutes long, placed at 11:23 at night. Camille Washington came home Monday evening expecting to walk through her front door. Instead, her headlights swept across the lawn, and every suitcase she owned was waiting for her outside. What she didn't know was that the bags on the lawn were only the beginning. Andre had barely started. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The kitchen light came on at 6 a.m. the same way it always did, not because of a timer, but because Andre Washington was already standing under it. He filled his coffee mug at the counter he'd built himself. Dark walnut, 42 inches. He'd measured it twice, cut it once, and set it level on a Saturday 3 years ago while Camille was at brunch. He ran his thumb along the edge of it now, the way he sometimes did without thinking. It was solid. Everything in this kitchen was solid, because he had made it that way. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. A hum he recognized because he'd rewired the outlet behind it himself after finding a loose neutral that would have caused problems eventually. That was the thing about being an electrician. You learned to hear what other people ignored. Little sounds, little warnings, things that flickered just slightly off. He stood at the window and looked out at the backyard while his coffee cooled. The garden beds needed edging. He'd get to it Saturday. Behind him, upstairs, the shower turned on. Camille came down 20 minutes later, already dressed. She was wearing the linen set she'd ordered online last month. Cream-colored, expensive, the kind of thing she called a necessary investment when he'd glanced at the total in their joint account. She looked good in it. She always looked good. That had never been the question. "Morning," she said, moving to the refrigerator without looking at him. "Morning." He poured her a mug and set it on the counter. She picked it up, took one sip, and put it back down. Her eyes were already on her phone. Her thumb was moving. "You eat yet?" he asked. "I'll grab something at the airport." She was typing something, a response to someone. "The car's coming at 8. He nodded. He watched her move through the kitchen the way she always did lately, like she was passing through it, not living in it, like the house was a hotel she'd gotten used to. The brochure was already on the counter. She'd left it there 2 weeks ago. Sycamore Ridge Women's Wellness Retreat, upstate New York. 4 days. Hot springs, yoga, digital detox, the works. Her girlfriend group did something like it every year. He'd heard about it since September. He kissed her goodbye at the door at 7:58. She offered her cheek. He kissed it, and she was already reaching for her rolling bag with the other hand. "I'll call when I land," she said. "Have a good time?" And then she was gone. The sound of her car service pulling away. The quiet settling back into the house like it had never left. Andre finished his coffee. Then he put on his boots, picked up his work bag, and went to build something. Friday came and went. She texted at 10 a.m. "Service is spotty up here. Retreat center is pretty remote. Don't worry if you don't hear from me much." He texted back, "No problem. Hope you're enjoying it." That was it. That was enough. He wasn't a man who needed constant contact. He trusted her. He went to work, ran a full-day service call in Eastfield, came home, made dinner for one, and watched 2 innings of baseball before falling asleep on the couch. Saturday, he sent a voice note in the morning. Nothing long, just his voice saying good morning, asking how the food was, telling her about a strange wiring job Kevin had flagged at one of their commercial accounts. The kind of ordinary, easy thing he always sent her. The kind of thing she usually responded to with a voice note back, laughing at something he'd said. She responded with a text 3 hours later. Having a great time. 5 words. No punctuation after the period. He read them once, set the phone face down on his workbench, and went back to what he was doing. He told himself the signal was bad. He told himself she was relaxing. He told himself she deserved the break. He was good at building things. He was also, he would later understand, very good at not yet seeing what was already there. Sunday afternoon, he was in the garage reorganizing his supply shelves when his phone rang. Kevin. "What's good?" Andre said, tucking the phone between his ear and shoulder. "Not much." Kevin's voice was easy, casual, the tone he used when he was just checking in. "Went to Marcus's cookout last night. Good time." "Yeah? Who was out there?" "The usual people." A small pause. "Tasha was there." Andre stopped moving. He held a box of wire nuts in one hand and didn't put it down. "Tasha? From Camille's group?" "Yeah." Another pause. Short, but not short enough. "She was there the whole night. Me and her talked for a while, actually." Andre set the box down on the shelf. Slowly. He didn't say anything. Kevin's voice came back, careful now. Quiet. "How's the retreat going?" Andre didn't answer Kevin's question right away. He stood in the garage with his hand resting on the shelf and let the words settle. Tasha was there. The whole night. He felt them the way you feel a bad connection before a breaker trips. Not the explosion, just the quiet wrongness that comes right before it. "She said the retreat was good," Andre said. His voice came out steady. That surprised him a little. Kevin didn't respond immediately. That gap, 2 seconds, maybe 3, said everything Kevin wasn't going to say out loud. Not yet. Not without more. "All right," Kevin said finally. "I'll let you go." "Yeah." He hung up. He set the phone on the workbench. Then he pulled up a stool and sat down and did nothing for 60 seconds. This was something he'd learned from his father. Not consciously, not from a lesson his father had ever put into words. Just from watching. His father was a plumber, and when a system wasn't behaving right, his father would go quiet. Completely still. He'd crouch next to a pipe and just listen before he ever put a hand on anything. Andre had thought it was strange. As a boy, he understood it now. You don't diagnose by panicking. You diagnose by listening. So he listened. The garage hummed around him. The smell of motor oil and sawdust. The thin light from the single overhead bulb. 60 seconds of nothing. Then he stood up and went inside. The brochure was still on the kitchen counter. Sycamore Ridge Women's Wellness Retreat. He picked it up and found the number at the bottom, under a photo of pine trees and a woman doing yoga at the edge of a dock. He called. 2 rings. A woman answered, bright and professional. He told her his wife had checked in Thursday, and he needed to confirm a detail about the stay. Last name? Washington. Camille Washington. The clicking of keys. A short pause. "I'm not seeing a reservation under that name. Do you have a booking confirmation number?" "No," he said. "Could you check under Holloway? That's her maiden name." More clicking. A longer pause this time. "I'm not finding anything under that name either, sir." "Are you sure it was our location? We have a sister property in Vermont." "No. Thank you," Andre said. "I appreciate your help." He set the phone down on the counter. He stood there for a moment, looking at the brochure. The woman on the dock, the pine trees, the clean, unbothered water. Then he went to his laptop. Their cell account was under his business plan. Had been since they got together. He logged in and pulled up her line. Location history? Disabled. He stared at that for a second. She had never done that before. Had no reason to. He moved to the call log. He scrolled slowly, going back to Thursday morning when she'd left. The pattern was there immediately, as plain as a wiring diagram once you knew how to read one. A number he didn't recognize. Called the day she left. Called again Friday morning. Friday evening. Twice. Saturday afternoon. Once Saturday night at 9, once at 11:23 p.m. That one lasted 47 minutes. 12 calls total. 3 days. He sat with that for a moment. Then he opened a new tab and typed in the number. It took him less than 2 minutes. Brandon Price. The search results came back with a LinkedIn profile, a real estate development company in the city, and a Facebook page he hadn't updated since last year. A well-dressed man in his late 30s, with a wide smile and sharp taste in sport coats. Andre had heard that name exactly once in his life. The summer before he and Camille got married, she'd mentioned it offhand at dinner, a man she used to date before they met. She'd kept it brief. It was nothing serious. A long time ago. He hadn't thought about it since. Hadn't had reason to. He looked at Brandon Price's face on the screen for a long time. Then he closed the laptop. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't try to. He went back to the garage and sat in the workshop until the neighborhood went completely quiet outside. No cars, no voices, nothing but the occasional dog somewhere down the block. He thought about Camille leaving Thursday morning in the cream-colored linen set. He thought about spotty service. He thought about having a great time. 5 words, no follow-up, no voice note back. 3 hours of delay to send 5 words. He thought about 12 phone calls to a man she described as nothing serious, a long time ago. He did not cry. He did not put his fist through anything, though there was a moment somewhere around 2 a.m. where his jaw was tight enough to ache. He breathed through it. He let himself feel the full weight of what he was looking at. And then, slowly, the way clarity always came to him, not like a light switching on, but like a dimmer turning up. He knew what he was going to do. Not because he was angry, because he was finished. Monday, he moved through the house with purpose. He pulled the luggage from the closet, all of it, her rolling carry-on, her large checked bag, the weekender with the gold zipper she'd bought in Charleston, the 3 tote bags she kept on hooks by the bedroom door. He opened drawers, and he opened her side of the closet, and he worked the way he always worked. Methodically, without wasted motion, without rage. He folded things. He zipped things closed. He carried each bag down the stairs one at a time and through the front door and across the porch and set them on the lawn. By the time the sun was going low and orange at the end of the street, her entire life in this house was arranged on the grass in front of it, neat, complete. Every suitcase standing upright, handles extended, like they were waiting for a car to take them somewhere. Andre went back inside. He turned on the living room light. He sat down in his chair, and he waited for her headlights. Her headlights swept across the lawn first. That was how he knew she'd seen it. The car slowed before it even turned fully into the driveway. The headlights moved across the grass and caught the bags in a slow, sweeping arc, and the car just stopped. Not parked, stopped, sitting half in the street with the engine still running. Andre watched from the window. He could see her silhouette through the windshield, the shape of her head. She wasn't moving. Then her phone lit up in her hand, and his phone buzzed on the arm of the chair. He picked it up. He answered. Andre. Her voice was careful, controlled. The voice she used when she was deciding how to handle something before she knew what it was. What is this? Come to the door, he said. My things are on the... Andre, what is going on? Come to the door. He watched her get out of the car. She was still in the linen set. Still the cream color she'd left in Thursday morning. She stood on the driveway and looked at her luggage on the lawn. Really looked at it this time, up close. And something shifted in her posture. Her shoulders pulled back. Her chin came up. She walked to the front door and knocked. He did not move from his chair. She knocked again. Andre, open the door. He stood then, slowly, and walked to the door. He didn't open it. "I know where you were," he said. His voice was quiet, even. "I know who you were with. You don't live here anymore." A pause, long enough that he could hear her breathing on the other side of the wood. "That is not—" She stopped. "Reset. You need to open this door so we can talk like adults." He said nothing. "Andre," the careful voice was starting to crack at the edges, "this is a misunderstanding. Whatever you think you know, Sycamore Ridge has no reservation under your name," he said. "Not Washington, not Holloway, nothing." Silence. "You had 5 days to explain," he said. "You spent them with someone else." That was when the performance broke open. She knocked harder. She said his name 3 times, then called him controlling, then said he was making a scene, then said this wasn't fair, then said the neighbors. And she was right about that last part. Because across the street Mr. Patterson's porch light had clicked on, and 2 doors down the Garcia's side light was on too. Yellow rectangles of attention falling across the quiet block. Camille didn't lower her voice. She was past that. "You don't get to do this," she said, loud now, her voice gone jagged. "You don't get to just— I have rights, Andre. To this house. To— You can't just put my things on the lawn." "I packed them neatly," he said. "Every item. Nothing's damaged." "That is not the point." He stepped back from the door. He picked up his phone and called Kevin. Kevin answered on the second ring. "She's here," Andre said. "10 minutes," Kevin said, and hung up. Camille was still at the door. He could hear her moving back and forth on the porch, heels on the wood planks, the sound of someone pacing through something they hadn't prepared for. She knocked again, twice, then went quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Lower, softer. The edges sanded down into something that was supposed to sound like reason. "Andre, please, just let me in so we can talk. I know this looks bad, but you don't have the full picture." He stood very still on his side of the door. He didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say through a door that was going to stay closed. Kevin's truck pulled up at the curb 9 minutes later. He got out without rushing, put his hands in his pockets, and stood at the edge of the lawn without a word. He didn't look at Camille with anger. He just looked at her, steady and still, and that seemed to be worse. Camille stood on the porch and stared at Kevin. Then she turned back toward the door. Her voice came out brittle now, something hard trying to hold its shape. "You're going to regret this," she said. "You hear me? You're going to regret this." Andre said nothing. She stood there for another moment. Then she came down off the porch and crossed the lawn and started loading her car. She was crying, and she was furious, and the 2 things were tangled up together, neither one winning. Kevin stood where he was and watched without moving. He did not help her. He did not speak. It took her 11 minutes. When her taillights reached the end of the block, Andre watched them shrink and then disappear around the corner. He stood at the window a moment longer. Then he went to the kitchen. He filled the kettle. He got the coffee out. He stood at the counter while the water heated, listening to the house settle into its quiet around him. He poured the cup. He sat down at the kitchen table, and he called his mother. The drive to Felicia's house took 22 minutes. Andre knew every turn without thinking about it. Past the hardware store on Clement, where he'd bought his first set of wire strippers at 19. Past the church on Dubois where his father's funeral was held. Left on Meridian, right on Sable, and then the small yellow house with the white shutters and the rose bushes his mother had been keeping alive for 30 years. Her kitchen light was already on when he pulled up. He sat in the car for a moment. Just sat there. The morning was gray and quiet, the street still mostly asleep. A dog barked somewhere distant, and then stopped. He got out and knocked twice, and she opened the door before his hand dropped. "Coffee's ready," Felicia said. She stepped back to let him in. She was already in her day clothes, a pale blue blouse, dark slacks, the small gold earrings she wore every day without exception. She looked at him the way she always had, the way that saw through rather than at, and she didn't comment on his face or the way he was carrying himself. She just went to the kitchen and poured him a cup and set it at the table across from hers. He sat down. She sat down. She folded her hands around her mug and waited. Andre looked at the table for a moment. Then he told her. All of it. Kevin seeing Tasha at the cookout. The retreat center with no reservation. The call log. The 47-minute call at 11:23 p.m. Brandon Price, a name from 7 years ago. The luggage on the lawn. He told it in order. The way he'd have explained a wiring problem to a client. This is what I found. This is what it means. This is where things stand now. Felicia did not make a sound while he talked. She didn't cluck her tongue, or shake her head, or reach across to touch his hand. She just listened, the way she'd always listened, completely and without interruption, her eyes on his face. When he finished, the kitchen was quiet. She lifted her mug and took a slow sip and set it back down. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you before, she said. I want you to know I've been sitting with whether or not I made the right call. Andre looked at her. 2 years ago. The Thanksgiving dinner, when everybody came here. She paused. I was in the hallway getting the extra chairs from the closet. Camille was in the back bedroom. The door wasn't all the way closed. She set her mug down carefully. She was on the phone with somebody. I don't know who. I wasn't trying to hear her, but the hallway's not long. She looked at him directly. She said Andre was not where she thought he'd be by now. Felicia's voice was flat and precise, the way she read things aloud that deserved to be heard exactly as they were. That's what she said, word for word. I've held on to those words 2 years because I've had 2 years to think about them. Andre didn't say anything. I told myself I could have misheard, Felicia said. I told myself even if I heard it right, one phone call didn't mean what it might mean. I told myself a wife talks to her friends sometimes and says things she doesn't fully mean. She paused. I was protecting you, or I was protecting myself from being the one who handed you that. I'm still not entirely sure which. Andre looked down at his coffee. Steam was still rising off it in a thin curl. Fell, he said. I know, she said quietly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, What do you think I should do? Felicia looked at him for a long beat. The rose bushes outside the window were bare this time of year, just thin stems against the gray morning sky. You already know, she said. You've already started. You came here to make sure you're not crazy. She picked up her mug again. You're not crazy, baby. He drove home an hour later. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and pulled up their joint bank account. Then their secondary checking. Then the shared credit card they'd opened the second year of the marriage. He was not looking for anything in particular. He was doing what he always did when something felt wrong with a system. He went back to the beginning and read every line. The credit card was clean, ordinary. The secondary checking account showed normal patterns, groceries, utilities, the occasional online order. But the joint checking told a different story. It took him 40 minutes of scrolling before the shape of it became clear. Once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. Cash withdrawals. Spread out so they didn't cluster. Never on weekend. Always on days he was running long jobs. A commercial install, a multi-day rewire, a full panel replacement across town. $400, $500, $450, $600. Always ATM. Always cash. He opened a spreadsheet. He entered every one. He cross-referenced the dates against his old work calendar, still synced to his phone going back 3 years. 22 months of withdrawals. The first one dated to a Tuesday in March, 2 years and 1 month ago. He opened a second tab and pulled up Brandon Price's LinkedIn profile. Brandon Price had relocated from Atlanta to the city. The date listed was February of that same year. Andre looked at the two numbers, the withdrawal date, the relocation date, and sat very still in the quiet kitchen. The total in the spreadsheet read $14,200. Andre called Kevin at 7:14 that evening. He didn't lead with the headline. He started with the spreadsheet, dates, amounts, the pattern of when the withdrawals happened and when they didn't. He walked through it the same way he'd walked his mother through everything that morning. In order. No editorializing. Just the facts laid flat. Kevin didn't interrupt. When Andre got to the Brandon Price LinkedIn date, February, 2 years and 1 month ago, and then read the date of the first withdrawal, March of the same year, the line went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where someone is thinking of something to say. The kind of quiet where someone is making a decision about what to do next. Say that again, Kevin said. The two dates. Andre said them again. Another beat of silence. Aight, Kevin said. His voice had changed. Not louder, not harder, just settled. Like something had clicked into place behind his eyes that was going to stay there for a while. Give me 2 days. Kevin called back on a Thursday evening and told Andre to come to his place. Andre drove over after sundown. Kevin lived in a 2-bedroom unit above a dry cleaner on Forsyth. Practical, close to the highway, easy access to the city and the suburbs both, which mattered for the property work he did on the side. Kevin had a folding table set up in his living room. His laptop was open. Papers were spread across the surface in stacks that looked disorganized but weren't. Kevin had a system, always had, and everything was exactly where he could put his hand on it. He poured Andre a glass of water and sat down. Brandon Price, Kevin said. He turned the laptop to face Andre. Real estate developer, has a website, has a LinkedIn, has a business address downtown that's technically a shared office suite. He tapped the screen. Looks legitimate on the surface. Looks like a man with a portfolio. He doesn't have a portfolio? Oh, he has one. Kevin pulled a paper from the top of the nearest stack. 2 residential properties. First one purchased 18 months ago. Second one, 8 months ago. He set the paper down and tapped it. Both of them were funded, in part, through down payments from an LLC. Andre looked at the paper. It was a printout of public property records, addresses, purchase prices, the name of the LLC listed as the originating entity. What's the LLC? Andre asked. BP Holdings Group, registered with the state. Kevin pulled another page. Formation date. 1 month after Brandon Price moved back to the city from Atlanta. Andre looked at the date. He looked at the withdrawal date from his spreadsheet, which he had printed and folded in his jacket pocket. He took it out and set it on the table. The LLC was formed in March. The first withdrawal was April. Kevin let him sit with that for a moment, without saying a word. Then Kevin opened a new tab on his laptop. Brandon's Instagram, set to public. He'd already compiled a separate document of screenshots, printed and organized by date. He pushed the stack across the table to Andre. He posts enough, Kevin said. Not every day, but enough. Restaurants, events, couple of project sites. He pointed to a photo near the top of the stack. Brandon at a rooftop bar, skyline behind him, a group of people around a table. This one's from 14 months ago. Look at the bottom left corner. Andre looked. The photo was wide. Most of it was Brandon and 2 men he didn't recognize, smiling at the camera. But at the left edge of the frame, slightly out of focus, 2 people stood with their backs mostly turned, talking, not part of the posed shot, just caught in the background. The woman on the left had her arm raised slightly, holding a drink. On her wrist was a gold bracelet, thin chain, small rectangular plate with a brushed finish. Andre had bought that bracelet for Camille at a jeweler on 5th Street. 3rd anniversary. He remembered standing at the glass case for 20 minutes before choosing it. He remembered the way she'd looked when she opened the box. He set the photo down. He picked up the next one. Then, the next. Kevin had found 11 photos total. Different dates, different locations, And in each one, the timestamp matched a period when Camille had told Andre she was somewhere else entirely. A birthday dinner with the girls, a work happy hour, a Sunday afternoon shopping trip, 14 months, 11 photos, one borrowed bracelet wearing a man's public timeline like a signature. Andre set the last photo down on the table. He put both hands flat on the surface and looked at the spread of papers in front of him, the LLC filings, the property records, the social media printouts, his own withdrawal spreadsheet with its 22 months of steady, patient cash. He was quiet for a long moment. Kevin didn't fill the silence. He leaned back in his chair and waited. She was funding him, Andre said. Kevin's words hung in the air of that apartment long after Andre left. She was funding him. Not a theory anymore. Not a feeling. A timeline with documentation behind it. Andre drove home in silence. No music. No podcast. Just the sound of the road and the particular kind of quiet that settles in when a man has confirmed the worst thing he suspected and doesn't yet know what to do with his hands. Camille called the next morning at 9:47. Andre was standing at the kitchen counter with his second cup of coffee when her name lit up the screen. He looked at it for 2 rings. Then he answered. She was crying before she got a sentence out. Not the hard, angry crying from the driveway. This was softer, calculated soft. The kind of crying that came with pauses in the right places. Andre, please. Her voice caught. I need you to hear me. It was only the 5 days. That's all it was. I made a terrible mistake, and I know that, and I'm not trying to minimize what I did. I love you. I do. And I want to come home. I want us to go to counseling and actually work on this. He listened. She kept going. She talked about the marriage having problems she'd been carrying alone, problems she didn't know how to bring to him. She talked about feeling disconnected. She talked about Brandon like he was a symptom, not a choice. The language was careful. It sounded rehearsed in the way that things sound when someone has been coached by their own fear into something that almost passes for sincerity. Andre said nothing. When she finally ran out of words and the crying filled the space where words had been, he said, "Okay," and ended the call. 3 days passed. He went to work. He ran a service panel upgrade in a duplex in the East End and spent a full afternoon troubleshooting a faulty neutral on a commercial job he and Kevin had picked up in March. He ate dinner at home. He slept. He did not call Camille. He did not reach out to her attorney. He did not give anyone anything to read. When she called again on Friday evening, the softness was gone. "I've spoken to an attorney." Her voice was even, businesslike. The crying was over. "And I want you to understand that I have rights here, to this house, to what we built together. I'm not trying to be difficult, but you can't just put my things on the lawn and act like that's the end of it." "I hear you," Andre said. "So what does that mean? Are you willing to talk about this like adults?" "I'm listening to everything you're saying," he said. A pause. She was trying to read him. He gave her nothing to read. "I need to know where your head is, Andre." "I know you do," he said. "We'll talk soon." He ended the call. He sat the phone face down on the counter and went back to what he was doing. Darius called on a Tuesday. Not at Camille's request. That much was clear from the first 10 seconds. His voice had the particular texture of a man who'd been sitting with something uncomfortable and had decided that carrying it alone was worse than putting it down. "I'm not calling for her," Darius said. "I need you to know that." "I know," Andre said. They talked for 40 minutes. Darius was careful with his language. He was a corporate attorney, and careful language was second nature. But underneath the care was something honest trying to find its way out. He confirmed he hadn't known about Brandon specifically, hadn't known about the 5 days, hadn't known about any of it in the way that would have required him to say something. But 8 months ago, he had seen Camille at a restaurant downtown. She'd been at a corner table with a man Darius didn't recognize. When he mentioned it later, Camille told him it was a work networking dinner, a colleague from a development company, and could he please not bring it up with Andre because Andre had a tendency to read into things. Darius had accepted that. He said so plainly. He wasn't proud of it. Andre listened without reacting. Then, near the end of the call, Darius said something in the tone of a man tying off a loose thread, not realizing the thread was load-bearing. She asked me some questions about divorce, what a spouse is generally entitled to, how assets get divided. That was probably a year and a half ago now. Maybe longer. He paused. I told her she should talk to a family law attorney, that it wasn't really my area. I didn't think much of it at the time. The line hummed. I don't know what any of this means, Darius said quietly, but I thought you should know. Andre thanked him. He told him he appreciated the call. He said they would be in touch. He ended the call, set the phone on the kitchen table, and sat in the chair where he had eaten breakfast every morning for 6 years. The 5 days were not a mistake. They were not a lapse. They were an audition, Camille testing the exit she had been engineering for 18 months, while Andre tiled the backsplash and wired the new panel and wrote the checks, and believed he was building something that mattered to her. He sat with that for the rest of the evening. Then he picked up the phone and began making calls. Andre did not sleep much that night. He didn't toss, didn't pace. He lay in the dark with his eyes open and let everything settle the way sediment settles in still water. Slowly, completely, until the picture at the bottom became clear. By 4 in the morning, it was clear. He got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. He wrote nothing emotional. No list of grievances, no letter to Camille that he would never send. Just structure. Just the shape of what needed to happen and in what order. He was, at his core, a man who fixed things by understanding their architecture first. Vera Cross's office was on the 12th floor of a building downtown, clean and spare in the way that offices are when the person inside them wants you focused on the work and not the furniture. She was 51, small, with close-cropped natural hair, and reading glasses she took off and put back on without seeming to notice she was doing it. She had the particular calm of a woman who had seen every version of this situation and found none of them surprising. Andre arrived at 9 sharp with a manila folder, a USB drive, and a 3-page summary he had typed out the night before. He laid it on her desk. Vera read without speaking. She turned pages slowly. She put her glasses on to look at the withdrawal log, took them off to look at the property timeline Kevin had assembled, put them on again to read the summary. When she finished, she set the last page down and looked at him across the desk. How long did it take you to put this together? She asked. About a week, Andre said. The financial records I had access to already. A friend helped with the property research. She nodded once. Okay. Let me tell you where you stand. She walked him through it plainly, without softening anything. The house was purchased before the marriage, in his name, with his financing. The renovation had been performed largely with his own labor. Labor he had documented over 3 years in the form of contractor permits, materials receipts, and work logs he kept as a professional habit. His income had represented the dominant share of the household's financial base throughout the marriage. All of this was documented. The cash withdrawals are a problem for her, Vera said. Not necessarily prosecutable, but in a divorce proceeding, that pattern tells a story. It tells a story about her credibility and about her intent. Any claim she makes about good faith participation in this marriage is going to sit next to that withdrawal log. She tapped the page lightly. Her attorney is going to advise her to tread carefully once they see what you have. Andre nodded. She's already made claims about the house. She can make them, Vera said. That doesn't mean they'll hold. Premarital ownership with documented improvement records is a strong position. We'll defend it. He left her office an hour later with a clear picture and a retainer agreement signed. The partnership paperwork with Kevin took 2 days. Kevin already had the framework drawn up. He'd been sitting on it for months, waiting on Andre to say the word. They met with a business attorney on Wednesday and walked through the restructuring of Washington Electrical Services into a formal partnership. Equity stakes documented, roles defined, everything filed and clean. It was legitimate. It was thorough. Andre's attorney confirmed it was entirely appropriate under the circumstances. When they walked out of that office, Kevin clapped him once on the shoulder and said nothing. He didn't need to. The letter from Camille's attorney arrived on Thursday. 2 pages, formal language, requesting mediation and proposing Camille's return to the marital home as a condition of good faith negotiations. Andre read it once at the kitchen counter, folded it, and set it aside. He did not hand it to Vera to respond to. Not yet. Instead, he picked up his phone and called Camille directly. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was careful, managed. "Andre, come to the house Sunday," he said. "Afternoon, 2 o'clock. A pause. "Are we? Is this about what my attorney sent?" "It's about things that need to be said face to face," he told her. "Bring Darius if you want. That's up to you." Another pause, longer this time. He could hear her recalibrating, deciding what this meant, what posture to take, what version of herself to bring through that door. "Okay," she finally said. "Sunday, 2 o'clock, he said, and ended the call. Camille spent the days between Thursday and Sunday preparing. She went over her language carefully. She rehearsed the shape of the conversation she expected, the back and forth, the negotiation, the careful acknowledgement of her mistakes, paired with the clear articulation of her rights. She had things to say about the marriage, about the distance she'd felt, about the ways Andre had been present in every physical sense while being somewhere else, entirely in others. She told herself she was ready. She told Darius she thought Andre was finally willing to talk. She packed a small bag, just in case he asked her to stay. She did not know what was sitting on that table. Camille arrived at 1:58. Andre heard her car pull into the driveway. He recognized the sound of the engine, the way you recognize anything you've lived beside for 7 years. He didn't move from his chair. He sat at the head of the dining room table with his hands folded and waited. The doorbell rang once. He got up, opened the door, and stepped back. She had dressed carefully. A deep burgundy blouse, the kind she wore when she wanted to appear serious but not cold. Her hair was done. Her posture was measured, shoulders back, chin level, the body language of a woman who had told herself she was walking into a negotiation she could win. There was a small, almost sympathetic tilt to her eyes. She had practiced that too. Darius stood half a step behind her. He wore a plain charcoal shirt, no tie. His face gave nothing away. He met Andre's eyes briefly when he came through the door and gave a small nod. Respectful, careful, carrying the particular weight of a man who already knew too much and wasn't sure where to put it. "Thank you for coming," Andre said. He said it the way you say it to contractors. Cordial, neutral. He led them to the dining room. 3 items sat on the table, not spread dramatically, not arranged to intimidate. Just placed there, the way you'd set out paperwork before a meeting. A printed document clipped at the corner. A manila folder, closed. A phone, screen up, with a voice memo app open and an audio file already queued. Camille's eyes moved across them quickly. Then she looked at Andre and settled into her seat with the careful ease of someone who had decided not to show that she noticed. Darius sat beside her and said nothing. Andre sat down across from them. "I'll go through these one at a time," he said. His voice was level, quiet, the same voice he used when explaining to a client why their panel needed replacing. Not unkind, but without any space for argument. He slid the printed document forward first. "Joint account withdrawals," he said. 22 months, $400 to $600 at a time. Always on days I was running 12-hour jobs. He let her look at it. 14,000, give or take. Started the same month Brandon Price moved back from Atlanta. Camille's jaw was set. She did not look up from the paper. He opened the manila folder next. Brandon's public property records, Andre said. 2 acquisitions. An LLC formed 1 month after he came back. The timeline matches the withdrawals almost exactly. He turned a page toward her. And these are from his social media. Restaurants, events, dates that line up with the nights you told me you were with your girlfriends. He tapped one photograph near the bottom of the page. He didn't say anything else about it. She could see what was in it. Then he pressed play on the phone. His own voice came out of the speaker first, calm and direct. Then Darius's voice. The call moved through its full shape. The careful admissions, the dinner 8 months ago, and then the moment where Darius said, without fully understanding what he was handing over, that Camille had been asking about divorce entitlements 1.5 years ago. Darius went very still when he heard his own voice. Andre stopped the recording. He looked at Camille. You weren't having a rough patch, he said. You were running a project. You were deciding whether to trade up, while I paid for the option. The room was absolutely quiet. Camille's mouth opened. The rehearsed language came. She could hear herself reaching for it. The marriage had problems. You were never really present. I was lonely, Andre. You have to understand what that does to a person over time. This wasn't just about Brandon. This was about us. I don't need an explanation, Andre said. He said it without heat, without cruelty. He said it the way you close a door. Not a slam, just a firm click of the latch. I needed a wife, he said. You were a tenant with a longer game. Camille stopped. Something moved across her face. Not guilt. Not quite. More like the specific humiliation of a person who has been understood completely and has no counter for it. Her script was still in her head, all that careful language, and none of it fit anymore. He hadn't given her the argument she'd prepared for. He'd simply told her what she was, and the worst part was how quiet he was when he did it. She looked down at the table. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Darius turned his head and looked at his sister. He looked at her the way you look at someone you have known your whole life and are only now fully seeing. It was not a hard look. It was something worse than hard. It was sad and certain, and without any remaining room for doubt. You should have just been honest with him, he said. He said it quietly, like something he'd been holding for a while. Camille had no answer. Not for Andre. Not for the table. Not for the 3 items that still sat there, patient and complete. And especially not for her brother. The papers were filed on a Wednesday. Vera Cross moved quickly and without fanfare. She submitted the initial divorce petition along with a financial disclosure packet that was, by any measure, one of the most organized documents her paralegal had seen in 3 years of working for her. Every withdrawal, every date, every account balance. 2 years of joint statements with the relevant entries highlighted in yellow, clean and precise, the way Andre did everything. Camille's attorney, a man named Forsyth, who operated out of a glass-fronted office downtown and was known for aggressive opening positions, received the packet that same afternoon. He called Camille that evening. The call lasted 11 minutes. Nobody was present for it but Camille, sitting on the edge of a bed in her sister-in-law's guest room with the phone pressed to her ear, but the shape of it could be read clearly in everything that followed. Because after that call, Forsyth's aggressive opening position quietly became something else. The letter his office had sent demanding Camille's right to return to the marital home was not followed up. The language in his subsequent correspondence to Vera Cross became measured, careful, the posture of a man who had looked at a paper trail and done the math. During discovery, the withdrawals came into full view. $14,000. 22 months. A pattern so consistent it looked like a second job. Forsyth sat across from Camille in his conference room 2 weeks into proceedings and used the word credibility 4 times in a single conversation. He did not accuse her of anything criminal. There was nothing criminal to accuse her of, technically. The money had been in a joint account, and she had the legal right to access it. But the pattern, he explained. The pattern was the problem. Juries don't like patterns, he said, even though this wasn't going to a jury. Judges don't like patterns either, he clarified. Mediators don't like patterns. The pattern made everything else she said about the marriage. The emotional unavailability, the mutual fault, the loneliness, land differently than it would have otherwise. It made her look like a woman who had been preparing, not suffering. She sat with that. He advised her, carefully but plainly, to abandon the aggressive claims. The house, in particular, was a wall she would not be able to climb. Andre had purchased it before the marriage. He had documented every renovation cost, every hour of labor, every material receipt in a way that was either very fortunate or very intentional. And Forsyth suspected it was the latter. The settlement they eventually reached was equitable, technically fair. It acknowledged the years and divided what could be divided and assigned what could be assigned. But it was not what Camille had calculated for herself when she was sitting in her car 18 months ago researching dissolution terms on her phone while Andre was 60 feet above someone's ceiling fixing their wiring. The house sold in 5 weeks. It had always been a good house. Andre had seen to that. The proceeds split according to the agreement. And that chapter closed with the particular silence of a door that has no reason to be loud. 4 months after Vera Cross filed the initial petition, a woman named Simone appeared in Brandon Price's Instagram stories. She appeared the way these things always appear, gradually and then all at once. A corner of a restaurant table, a laughing shot on someone's boat, then a photo where she was centered and tagged, and Brandon's arm was around her shoulders, and his smile was easy and uncomplicated in the way smiles are when there is nothing complicated in the room. Simone had no prior marriages, no ongoing legal proceedings, no paper trail. Camille found out on a Thursday evening through a woman named Priya, who had been in their friend group for 4 years and who delivered the information the way people deliver things they feel guilty about knowing, quickly, with an apology attached, as if speed reduced the damage. It did not reduce the damage. Camille did not call anyone after that call. She sat in the guest room that was not her room in the house that was not her house, and she held the phone in her lap and stayed very still. Brandon had not called her since the filing. She had told herself he was being careful, giving her space, being smart about appearances during an active proceeding. She had told herself a number of things, and she had been in the business of telling herself things for long enough that she was reasonably good at it. But there was no version of Simone's smiling face in Brandon's stories that could be explained into something manageable. The friend group did not hold a meeting. Nobody announced anything or took sides in any official way. But Priya stopped initiating. A woman named Denise, who had always been closer to Camille's side of things, responded to texts with shorter and shorter replies until the replies stopped coming. A dinner that had been loosely planned for 6 weeks quietly dissolved. No one canceled it formally. It simply never got scheduled. Andre had known these women for years. He had fixed Priya's outdoor lighting at cost. He had lent Denise's husband his truck twice without being asked twice. He had shown up. He had always shown up. Explanations that had sounded reasonable when Camille was telling them began to sound different when the women who heard them thought about the man they were about. Darius still called. He called on her birthday. He called when their mother had a minor health scare in October and needed someone to coordinate the follow-up appointments. He called when he said he would call, and he showed up when he said he would show up. Because Darius was that kind of man regardless of circumstance. But the calls were not long. The warmth that had always been a given between them, the ease, the shorthand, the specific comfort of a sibling who knew you better than most, had been replaced by something careful and deliberate. He did not bring up Andre. He did not bring up the settlement. He did not say, "I told you so," because he was not that kind of man either. He was simply more formal now, like a man fulfilling an obligation he genuinely believed in, but fulfilling it from a greater distance than before. The rental apartment was on the 4th floor of a building 12 minutes from where she used to live. It was not a bad apartment. It was clean, and it had good light in the mornings, and the neighbors were quiet. But it was hers entirely, in the specific way that meant every bill that came in was hers entirely too. The electricity, the water, the internet, the grocery runs that used to disappear into a shared account and now appeared as individual line items in a budget she was learning, at 36, to run for the first time. Nobody had destroyed her. That was the thing she turned over in the quiet of those first weeks, in the mornings before work, and the evenings after. Nobody had launched a campaign against her. Andre had not gone on social media. Kevin had not told anyone anything. Even Darius had kept his mouth shut. The story had moved through the world the way true things do, not because anyone pushed it, but because it had its own weight and its own direction. She had made a calculation. She had decided that what she had was worth less than what she imagined she could have. She had decided that a man who built things quietly was not enough, and that a man who wore his ambition loudly was the better bet. She had exchanged the most valuable thing in her life for 5 days, and a man who was currently photographing someone named Simone on a boat without a single complicated feeling in his chest. She stood at her kitchen window on a Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, and looked out at a view that was entirely her own. The truck read, "Washington Electrical and Contracting," in clean white letters across both doors. Andre pulled up to the commercial site at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning, 14 months after a woman drove away from his lawn with her luggage in her back seat, and a warning he never lost sleep over. He cut the engine and sat for a moment, looking at the building frame rising against a pale sky. 4 stories of steel and concrete that needed every inch of its electrical infrastructure planned, routed, and run by his crew. His crew. 8 men now. 2 vans. A second truck they'd added in the spring when the workload made it necessary rather than aspirational. Kevin had been after him to expand for 2 years before any of this happened, and Andre had kept saying soon, not because he doubted the business, but because he had been waiting for the right time to sit down with Camille and talk through what growth would mean for their life. He never needed that conversation. He climbed out of the truck and pulled on his work vest. The site foreman, a big man named Raleigh who communicated almost entirely in nods, lifted his chin in greeting from across the lot. Andre nodded back. Simple as that. This contract, a 4-story mixed-use development on the east side, the single largest job Washington Electrical and Contracting had ever taken on, had come through a referral from a general contractor Andre had worked with twice before. The man had called Kevin first, and Kevin had called Andre while he was still on the phone, putting the referral on hold just long enough to say, "Tell me you're ready for this." Andre had been ready. The house he lived in now was smaller than the one he'd sold. That had been deliberate. He didn't want more space than he needed. He didn't want to rattle around inside walls that held the shape of something finished. He wanted a house he was still working on, rooms that needed attention, a yard that needed time, a structure that was becoming something rather than sitting inside what it had already been. He bought it 8 months ago, a squat brick house 4 miles east of where he used to live, on a quiet street with old oak trees that dropped enough leaves in October to keep a man busy for a full weekend. The kitchen needed new fixtures. Two of the bedrooms needed rewiring, something he found during his own walkthrough before he made the offer. A small satisfaction, catching what someone else had missed. He had started with the kitchen. That was how he always started. The place where people gathered. Get that right first, then move outward. Felicia came on Sundays. She brought food she said was just extra from what she'd cooked anyway, which was never true, but was always welcome. She sat at his kitchen table the same way she sat at her own, fully, without apology, like a woman who understood that presence was the point. They talked about the business, about the neighborhood, about nothing in particular. Sometimes she walked through the rooms he was still working on and offered opinions he didn't ask for and occasionally agreed with. She had never once said, "I told you so," about Camille. Not once. That restraint was, in Andre's estimation, one of the most loving things a person had ever done for him. Kevin came on football Sundays, sometimes with Raleigh, sometimes with one or two of the crew, and the house filled up in a way that felt earned rather than performed. There was no management involved in any of it. Nobody was performing comfort or curating an image for an audience of one. The people in his house were there because they wanted to be there. Andre had not fully understood, until the absence of it, how much energy he had spent in a room with a woman who was quietly tallying everything and finding it insufficient. That energy was his now. He used it on the business, on the new house, on early mornings and clean invoices and a savings account that was growing in the way things grow when there is only one person making decisions about where the money goes. He was not bitter. He had put that bag down. He had carried it to the lawn along with everything else, and he had left it there, and he was not in the business of going back for it. On a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the commercial contract kicked into full swing, Andre was alone in the back bedroom, the one he'd decided would be his office eventually, running new wire through a channel he'd opened in the wall, focused and quiet, completely himself in the specific way a man is when nobody needs anything from him and the work in his hands is good work, going well. His phone buzzed on the floor beside his tool bag. He glanced down. A contact request. The name read, Diane Okafor. Okafor Architecture. He recognized it immediately. An architect he had met briefly at a contractor's dinner 3 weeks back. She had asked him thoughtful questions about load-bearing renovation. Real questions, the kind that came from genuine curiosity. And she had listened to his answers in a way that meant she was actually going to use them. He looked at the notification for a moment. Then he set down his wire stripper, walked to the bathroom, and washed his hands clean. He picked up the phone. He had always been good at building things. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.